Good morning and happy Saturday. Thank you so much for joining us here on C Major Before the Show. It's the last Saturday before the new year. It's the New Year weekend. And so we are aiming to talk with you about some plans that we would like to help you make for the new year. So this is the New Year's Eve weekend, however you want to say it. It's the weekend before New Year's, and it's the weekend before New Year's Eve, and it's the weekend before December turns into January, if you want to say it that way. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be with you. And we are back from the holidays. Yes, I had a great holiday, I have to admit. I must admit, I had a great holiday. I was with my family, and we were talking about music. We were listening to music, and I'll say a little bit more about that later on in the podcast. But I'm more excited about talking with you because over the holidays, we really thought hard. And we thought about some of the things that we can really focus on for 2019. So as I'm talking around to the students that I teach on this side of the podcast, I'm really starting to get a sense of what recreational music makers look for. What are they looking to do? When you say you want to learn to play the piano, what do you really mean? That's such a fascinating question for me because I'm going to say something about that a little bit later in the podcast. It has to do with my family, so I'm really trying to hold off on that comment. But getting back to you, what I keep hearing is that you want to learn to play songs that mean something to you. And whether it's something you're listening to already on your mobile device, if you say, hey, Alexa, play my favorite song, or Siri, get me my playlist, whatever it is you're saying to your mobile devices at home to hear the music that really drives your day and really gets your day going, that's what we're talking about. So what I'm finding, and maybe it's just me, I really haven't had a chance to talk with that many teachers to see what they're doing. I do have an idea. Some of my colleagues are working with mostly younger students, like preteens or teenagers. So, of course, they're teaching little piano skills that they can just show off on a whim. If they're around a keyboard and their friends are around, they can just play a little something on the keyboard to impress their friends. And then I'm talking with other colleagues who are more on the serious side of music making. So they're all involved with exams and so forth. I've done a little bit of that. I like it. But for some reason, it seems that the students that cross my path the most are the ones who are recreational music makers. I'm not sure why that is. And it's all ages. It's all ages. So I'm not just tuned into one age. I really wanted to be tuned in to just adults, just adult education, adult music makers. But for some reason, it seems that my draw when it comes to piano lessons is intergenerational. So I've come to accept that. That's what it is. That's what it's going to be. And so I will just accept that and just say it is what it is. And may it be so. May it be so. So now that I understand where this is going, let's see how we can make it meaningful for those who may be joining us here on the podcast. So if you are an adult learner, if you are an adult and you're learning to play the piano for the first time, write to us. Let us know how you are doing it. And how are you able to teach yourself? How are you able to share the information that you learned with others? What can you teach now that you weren't able to teach before you started tinkering around with the piano or the keyboard? What can you do now that you weren't able to do before you started playing around with the piano? And what are you looking to do? What are you aiming to do? What's your goal for playing the piano. So I had a very interesting question this week. I should say this past week, because an adult student said to me that she really enjoys playing songs for her family, songs that she can learn to play well enough to record herself on her phone and send those videos instantly to social media, to her friends, and they all love her for it. She's a star in her own social circle, and I think that is just terrific. Let's give her a shout out. Let's give her a cheer for that. That's great. I would say that student really found her voice, found her footing. I think that's just fantastic. Anytime you can take control of your music making and to say, this is what I love to do. And so then the question came up, well, was she going to become better at reading music just because she's playing songs that she loves to play? And she is reading music, I have to say that. I still categorize the student as a recreational music maker because she's only playing those songs that she likes to play. Everything from light jazz to light pop to folk tunes. And so these are familiar tunes to her, songs that she can sit down and play. Others will recognize what she's playing. That makes her feel good to be able to play a melody. Also, another discovery that we made too was that she found that it's easier to play songs on the piano that are really designed for piano playing, if that makes sense. Because sometimes songs are not arranged well enough to be played on the piano, but they are arranged well enough to be played along with somebody singing, if you know what I mean. So, getting back to you for plans for 2019. Aren't you excited? I'm going to be giving out lots of homework for 2019, so get ready. And as a matter of fact, I have a homework assignment for you today. So what are those plans? We talked about in our description for today's show a 3-month plan. You can say 3 months, you can say 90 days, you can say 12 weeks. However you want to say, you can say a semester if that helps you to organize it in your mind about how long you're going to be committing to the plan. But I want you to really think about putting aside that time on your calendar, on your mobile device. Go ahead and just lock it in and say, this amount of time I'm really going to devote to learning, and we're going to focus on chords. I've decided we're going to focus on chords. Yes, big applause for that, because it took us a while to figure out what should we teach on a podcast. It's very difficult to figure out what to teach on a podcast because you're starting out with all of this knowledge about what works in piano lessons, in a studio, in person. But how do you talk over a podcast about playing the piano? So I think we may have figured it out. We figured it out that learning to play by chords and by ear, if you'd like to call it that, is probably going to be the most fun way for you to learn. So we're going to focus on chords for 2019. We'll focus on chords for as long as we can, and then we'll step back and we'll probably bring in some other topics. Now, if you're wondering if the podcast is going to be scripted, it's going to be half scripted for 2019. I would say half scripted because we tried to do a full script where I typed out 30 pages and I timed it. I was able to read off the pages over the podcast. That wasn't a problem. I was able to bring the music up where the music needed to be brought up, bring the music down. So the production side of putting together a podcast for the amount of time that I wanted to have it was a little laborious. So I'm not sure if I want to do it that way this time. It wasn't tedious. It was just a lot of labor involved. So I think it'll be half scripted because I do think it's best to be prepared when it comes to saying to you what we need to say about music making and not just talk off the cuff. So half scripted meaning we will have specific instructions for you to follow when it comes to learning chords. We will organize it in a way that you're learning a set number of chords for each podcast. And then we're going to have different segments for the podcast. So after the lesson, then we'll go into something else. So it could be a segment of where you've written to us and you told us about your music making. How are you learning to play the piano, and how are you sharing that experience with others across social media, for instance? And do you have any questions for us over here? And I keep saying us because I realize it's not just me. It really is us. There's a team that helps us get this podcast on this platform, and we wouldn't be able to do it without that team. So shout out to the team. That makes this all possible here on C Major Before the Show. Now, another thing we're going to be doing, we're going to be tying in this show closely to the C Major radio show, which is what it was supposed to be. I just wasn't quite sure how to do that. I thought, okay, what should I do? Should I talk mostly literacy over on C Major Before the Show? Should I use fancy terms? What are we doing here? I think the best way to tie it in is because you're not learning to write down music clearly over here. What you're learning to do is take those tools that are out there and put those tools to use. So if I say to you, for homework, I want you to find 3 chords that you can play on the piano. Now, very specifically, those 3 chords are going to be C, F, and G. So if you have a way to write this down, write it down. If you have a way to save it on your mobile device, download the podcast episode so you can remember the chords that we're talking about. So we're talking about a C major chord, an F major chord, a G major chord. If you want to use the word triad, you can use triad. It's C, F, and G. Roman numerals, we can get into that. 1, 4, 5, if you like to say it that way. So you have a choice between now and the new year, because when we join you again, it will be the first weekend in January. So between now and then, I want you to see if you can get a hold of either a chart, a book, a poster, get a hold of a teacher, somebody who can help you see what that looks like visually, because we're going to need to have that. We're going to need you to have that in front of you so that we can guide you a little bit more. Okay, so can you do that for homework, please? And thank you. I'm also going to post this same assignment over at C Major's Classroom. And we are still on WordPress. We are still thinking about upgrading, but we're going to hold off a little bit because I want to make sure I have the right amount of listeners first, and that I am also engaging with the right audience on this side of the podcast as well, because I'm out and about. I'm talking to people all the time, just doing my own little social experiment of who's into music making and who's not, and just taking it from there. So it really is an exciting time. Okay, so that's your homework assignment, to find out what a C, F, and G chord looks like on the piano. Now, if you need a picture, I think we might have posted some chords on our website. I know we have. We posted either the picture of the piano, and then we labeled it the chord that's being visualized, and then we might have further labeled it with stickers. So you can see some of the chord labeling over on our Facebook page. Go over to Facebook for C Major's Classroom over there, C Major Before the Show. It should be a public page that you can access, and then just look at some of the pictures that we posted. From time to time, you'll also see a picture that's associated with the podcast episode, and you'll see hands that are placed on the keyboard, and you can see the way those hands are playing those chords. Now, that's going to become an issue too. How are you going to play these chords on the piano? We'll talk about that on the upcoming podcast. So, traditionally, if you play chords in your left hand, there are certain fingers that you should be using to play those chords. It's just comfortable, it's standard, is what we use as pianists. What I'm finding is that sometimes my students prefer to use other fingering for the chords. We can only make a suggestion. We can't make you do what's comfortable for us. Everybody's hand placement may turn out to be different. Fingering may be different for you, but we want to do what works for you and also give you a suggestion on what can work better once you tried it your way. So I find that too. It happens that some students just need to do things their way first, and then they step back and say, is there a way to do this better? And then we're there to help them, which is great. So just so you have an idea, today's podcast may be a little bit shorter than normal because we're just spouting out the plans for you. And then for 2019, we are planning to spend lots and lots of time with you, making sure you really get it. So I've also thought about how can I post a video demonstrating some of this. I want to be very careful about that. So we have lots to think about between now and next week. That's our homework. But I hope you will join us. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a music break because I want to take a little sip of orange juice, believe it or not coffee. I'm drinking juice this morning. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to tell you what I did with my family. So, back in a moment. C major before the show. Thank you so much for letting me take an orange juice break here and to have you listen to some of the music that we play here on the podcast. By the way, if you're ever curious about the songs that we play on the podcast, just let me know. You can send me a quick note on social media. You can meet us over at Twitter at CMajorPorter1 and just drop me a message in my box over there and say, hey, what was that tune you were playing this morning? And I can tell you what it is. So I wanted to take some time to share with you some of my personal holiday plans and what I did with my family, because my family has been very instrumental in helping me with my music making since I was a little girl. And it was nice to kind of go over some of those memories when we all met up. And it had been a while since we had met up for the holidays, so I'm very grateful for that. So shout out to my family this morning. If you happen to be tuning in to my podcast, thank you so much for listening, and let me know what you thought. Let me know what you thought about the things that I'm saying over here, because a lot of this is because of you. It's because of my family that I'm into music making. I've been able to go as far as I have. It's so interesting always to talk to family members who think you should have gone further. So I have to laugh at that one. One of my family members, I won't say who. I'm going to protect the confidentiality, I will say that, of this person. But the person said, weren't you supposed to be playing with the New York Philharmonic? And I just looked at them and I just went, I don't know about that. But you know what? All things are possible. And if you just believe, maybe one day I'll play with the New York Philharmonic. Who knows? See, I'm even stumbling on the word because it's nerve-wracking to think I would play with the world's largest, greatest orchestra, the New York Phil. But who knows? Maybe there's something that I could write or put together that would be fitting and proper for that platform. But of course, they would have to reach out to me for something like that. I wouldn't go to them and say, hey, I want to play with the New York Phil. But I do know and have friends that play with orchestras. So shout out to my friends that are concert pianists that play with orchestras, world-class orchestras. And I do have someone in my family who does the same thing that I do when it comes to piano lessons. So again, just protecting the confidentiality of this person. But we didn't really get a chance to talk about what this person is doing with their piano lessons. But I do have a new addition to the family that was talking with me about piano lessons. So shout out to her. And she wanted to know if my piano teaching was just specifically for young students or if I taught other ages. And so I was able to respond to her with confidence about that. And it was very interesting. Now, the other interesting that came out was family members who've known me from the very beginning, who know that when I first started to play the piano, that I wasn't using paper. I wasn't using paper music. I was using my ear because I played what I heard. And when I was growing up, we heard a lot of music at Christmas time. And for some reason, the music that struck me the most was the music that you heard on the Charlie Brown specials. So the music that the Charlie Brown characters would dance to, the music that the pianist on Charlie Brown would play, and the Linus and Lucy theme. That was one of the first songs that I learned to play on the piano. And then this other family member reminded me that I also performed for the first time the Baby Elephant Walk on the piano. So if you know anything about Baby Elephant Walk by Mancini, I believe, is the composer of Baby Elephant Walk. I could look that up later, but that was nice. That was a nice memory. And then we just exchanged memories. And I recalled these same family members trying to teach themselves to play the piano, or playing music on the piano and the songs that they played on the piano. And then the other interesting thing that came out of this family conversation was that most of the people in my family would like to learn to play songs, and they don't feel that they have a strong enough talent to learn method. So that's what I'm going through now, and that's why I've decided to teach the way that I'm teaching, because it keeps being presented to me, it keeps being put in front of me that a lot of my students are going to be recreational focused. I've had a couple of serious-minded students. Those I've worked with, they've done really well. I've been delighted to work with those students. But for the most part, I'm helping students that really want to learn to play from a recreational standpoint, if I could say it that way. Now, the other thing that came out in our family conversation, it was kind of sad that there was a member of our family who didn't go as far into the music making process as they might have gone if their sponsor, I'll say it that way, if their sponsor had kept up the weekly routine of getting them to the lessons. But the sponsor got tired because the sponsor had been doing it for years for other children in the family, and just said, you know what, if there's any resistance toward piano lessons, I'm just going to say, you know what, just forget it, just do sports instead. And so that's what happened. So that was kind of sad, but we can only wonder now, if this person had gone further in music making, what they might have become. But that's a wonder. And that happens too. But I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to study piano for as long as I did. I took piano lessons for 10 years. And I played well enough to start doing some things that you do at the 10-year mark. And that can include exams, that can include competitions, that can include a serious study of classical music. And so I went the route that a lot of my friends in classical music went. They just went as far as they could go. They made the best music they could make, and sometimes went into other instruments. So for me, it was mainly piano. Now, in school, I did play clarinet, so I'm hoping to get back to clarinet as a recreational instrument at some point, and just to play it for fun. But sometimes you can get lost when you go into serious study. And then if you're in a situation, maybe at an office party or someplace where you're surrounded by non-music makers, and then someone goes, hey, I hear you play the piano. Can you sit down and play us a tune? And then you just go, maybe I can, maybe I can't. Which tune are we talking about? So the turning point for me, stepping away from paper music again, was to challenge myself to just sit down and play any song. And so once I felt comfortable doing that, it opened up a whole new world for me. And I think that's what Chords will do for you. So I think Chords will be able to do that for some of you from the very beginning, because you're going to learn to play by chords and by ear. Now, I do have students that rely on paper music, and what they'll say to me, this is boring. I don't want to play like this. This is boring. So what? I just played a chord. So what? You know, that's the attitude that sometimes teachers have to deal with. You know, the students that go, okay. But when you really understand how to use chords, it will open up a whole new world for you. So learning about chords, learning about rhythm, learning about timing, learning about how to make those changes is a way of playing a song. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the methods that are out there to help you, and some of the products, I'll say like that are on the market right now that you can find in your nearest music retail location. But at the same time, you may be able to do it without anything in front of you at all. So we have talent that we work with that's able to do that too. And a while back, I did mention music making and wellness. And I did mention that if you're learning to play pleasing sounds on a keyboard, for instance, you may decide to use that one-fingered chord feature that's on your keyboard. So we may not talk about that so much, but we may just mention it from time to time, because some of you listening will find it difficult to play chords, to play three-fingered chords, two-note chords, four-note chords, and beyond. So I think you should just try to do what's comfortable for you. Make the best music that you can make. That's a message that we've been sending as well. And also we've been trying to say that you should pay attention to what you're able to teach yourself. You should also pay attention to that point where you're going to need a teacher. So right away, I can already tell you, if you're learning to play by chords and by ear, you can teach yourself those chords. But where you need someone to come in and help you with the non-self-teaching part is when you get ready to figure out which fingers to place when you're playing those chords, the hand placement. So that's when you need to call on a teacher for that. So it may be quick. It may be something you can do in a first lesson, a second lesson, or you may decide to sign up for a little while and take some lessons. I don't think taking lessons for a little while is going to hurt anyone. And for those teachers that are looking to retain students for years, then you may feel a little taken aback at someone that comes to you and they say, I only want to be here for a number of weeks, just a month, and then I'm going to go off and do my own thing. But I think there's a market for that too. I think that teachers just have to be open to that, because we live in a time now where everybody is so reliant upon technology that they may or may not take the time to do something long-term when it comes to piano lessons. So you have to take that into account too. Okay, so now that I'm talking about that, let me close out one of my files here. And let me open up something that came across my desk. So I'm going to be referring to this as something that came across my desk in the form of a poster. And so if you happen to be online, go ahead and look that up. Now, I do want to say, just because I mention a product doesn't mean that I have the right to endorse that product. And so I don't want to get into all the legal ramifications of that, but I really don't find it a problem to just say, look this up if you can. So it's www.thereallyusefulpianoposter.com, I believe, if you go there. So if you just look up the Really Useful Piano Poster, it should come up. And so it came across my desk. I was able to take a peek. I think what they're doing, they've been really successful so far at putting together information in a very concise way that you can access as the learner. And there is a fee for downloading the poster, but you can look into all of that if you want. If you happen to look into this beside maybe a plastic chord chart that you have, or a fold-out chord chart, or some other poster that you may have found online, then the information should be the same or similar. So we're looking over in, I believe it's the section where it's labeled common chords, and we are really looking for major chords. So you'll see everything spelled across horizontally. So you'll see everything basically going from west to east. And so the first chord I'm seeing is a C major chord, and you can see everything colored that outlines a C, an E, and a G note. Those three notes make up a C major chord. Okay, and then you're going to bounce from there and find an F chord. So if you go down on this poster, staying in the same column, you should be able to find an F chord, F-A-C. And then if you go down from there, you should be able to find your G chord, G, B, D. So those are 3 chords we're going to be working with in our first episode for the new year. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is that to tie this all in over at the C Major Radio Show, we're going to show you how to chart these chords on a staff. That's going to be very exciting. For anyone looking to write music down clearly, that's going to help us tie in this podcast to the other podcast. And we will show you how to chart it over there. And we're going to speak in terms of lines and spaces. We'll talk in terms of clef signs and how to write out all of those things in a way that you can access and turn this into more paper music, if you will. And so I think that's important because even if you are just interested in learning to play by chords and by ear, if you are already a pianist that can read music, but you never thought in terms of chord changes and how to play a song simply just by chords, I think it's important to know how to play simply, as well as it may be important to you to learn to play some of the most difficult music that's out there as a reading pianist, as a classically trained pianist who can play the big pieces. But being able to sit down and just play simply is important too. So that way you don't get embarrassed. Because the rest of the world doesn't know how good you are. The rest of the world may not know you're good at playing Mozart, or you're good at playing Beethoven, or you're good, or they may know, but they may not care about that. They may care in the moment. If you're at an office party, or if you're at a party at somebody's house and there's a piano available and they say, hey, can you sit down? Oh, Sue is having a birthday today. Can you sit down and play happy birthday? Believe it or not, I have friends with 2 and 3 music degrees who can't just sit down and simply play happy birthday. They don't know what the chord changes are. They never thought about it. They just thought, oh, where's the music? I'll just read it. But if you can learn to think in terms of chords, it will, in my opinion, change your life. It will change your life. It will change your music making. And if you're starting out with chords, then I would just say you're going to have a fun time at the piano, because playing by chords is fun. And in my opinion, it's easy enough to do that you can do it very quickly and see how it works when you're making those changes. So when you're looking at beginner notes, or you're looking at music that makes it easy for you to play the piano by chords, there's music out there. There's music out there that helps you to play by chords, that helps you play beginner notes, meaning the letters are filled in, and that makes it easy for you to put the melody with the chords. We'll talk more about that. I'm trying to hold off on saying so much ahead of time, but I hope that helps to clarify what we plan to do for 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Again, it's been a great pleasure to be with you this morning, and we're going to finish out the hour by just wishing you a very happy New Year's Eve, a very happy New Year, and we're looking forward to big things that you'll do with your music making for the new year. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time right here on C Major Before the Show.